In this episode, we're dropping the needle on Workingman's Dead, the Grateful Dead's rootsy, harmony-soaked left turn that traded psychedelic sprawl for tight songwriting and dust-kicked Americana. It's the record where the band sharpened their storytelling, leaned into folk and country textures, and delivered classics that still feel like they're playing on a front porch at sunset. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. We said it in year one, and I'm saying it as we close out year number 5. We feel it's the best place for music and movie podcasting, the home. And our opinions are all that matter.
Year
right,
number
Eric?
5. That's right. Yep. Yeah. And I applaud your introduction. That was fantastic.
Why, thank you.
You're getting better and better. It's so eloquent.
You should go back and listen to the first ones. They were,
no,
sound like we were doing it in a library.
I wish I could do all the outtakes.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
No?
No.
We're going to do a compilation.
Hey, listen, I'm proud of the stuff we've done, from day one. We made some comments. Yes, it's a little stiff, but our point was made. And I think, So
and here we are. Still chugging along.
That's right.
And we're bringing out the big guns for, recently, again, we've talked about this to death, but we're in the age of losing our musical and movie heroes, and recently lost Bobby Weir. Well, I always called him Bob Weir. When did it become like Bobby? Did I miss that?
I mean, Jerry used to call him that. If you ever hear him, Jerry talk about him, and then
I always called him Bob Weir though too.
Yeah,
and
Bob Weir, right?
A lot of my Deadhead friends call him Bobby.
Yeah, okay. Usually when you get older, you drop that type of a name. He actually got older and became Bobby. It was more Bob Weir, but I digress. Anyway, we
is he the last gentleman? I mean,
Mickey Hart is the last.
Mickey Hart
is still alive.
What?
Yeah. Bill Kreutzmann's still alive.
Bill Kreutzmann's still alive. Yeah.
But he doesn't play.
Yeah, but they both retired pretty much. So,
but it was a big blow. But you know what? It was so like. It really wasn't as a big of a deal. Like I just happened to come across it. It was like happenstance. Oh, Bob Weir died. It's like, but it wasn't as broad as some other artists.
As beloved as he was, Jerry Garcia was like the big huggable teddy bear, and he was like the kind of the image of the band.
Yeah,
and then I think after he passed, even though they continued as Dead and Company, I think it was kind of like, oh, okay, because even when Phil Lesh passed away, it was kind of like, oh,
he kind of like Bob Weir. I feel like was like sort of like step back into the sort of indie folk, like a lot of the indie bands that are happening today. He kind of stepped back into that fold, I think. But still, I consider him an icon of the group. I mean, he's, he was kind of keeping it going. I mean, it's Jerry Garcia and then Bob Weir. Yeah, I think, I don't know, but it just seemed like very low key. Like it was like, oh yeah, Bob. By the way, Bob Weir died.
I mean, when Garcia died, Phil Lesh kind of came into his own as well. He came a little bit more up in the front, and people, I think, started to realize what an integral part he played in the band. Yeah. And I think with Bobby, mainstream media might not have made as big a deal about it, but I mean, they had a big thing for him in San Francisco, like thousands of people showed up. And, I even said this to Dean when I suggested to do this one on the streaming services. When he died, Grateful Dead music like spiked hard. Yeah. And all of a sudden, all of their music went up. So, I mean, while I don't think it appeared, I think it might have also been in part because it happened on a Saturday night or a Saturday afternoon, that the media maybe didn't pick up on it as much. But I definitely think throughout the music community, I definitely think people realize what a huge loss.
Oh yeah, really absolutely. It reverberated, but
well,
so we're gonna.
Dead fans. They're going to be They're going to take it to the grave. I mean, they're going to take it as hard as they can. But whatever. Yeah.
I mean, put it this way: and this is the thing where I was like, wow, maybe I wonder if this is why. there's an Instagram page related to a club at my school that they just made a post recently that had a Grateful Dead song underneath it. And I was like really surprised. And I'm like, I wonder if this happened because somebody heard it because Bob Ware died.
Could be. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's what happens when an icon passes and maybe people have a passing understanding or may have heard the name, and then that's the beauty of streaming services. You can just jump right on and
pick it right
up.
Right.
And check it out. But before we go any further, Eric, we've been talking, and there's been two voices that have been talking with us, and we didn't introduce. So,
I'm sorry.
It's not you.
We do it all the time, right? I mean, but Chris Clark is such a
part of the furniture, man.
I think, he is. I was going to say he's a picture, but to have Mr. Clark, and I say that you came in, you put Kevin. But right. I'm going to refer to you as Mr. Clark. You're Mr. Clark. See, you are.
Kevin Clark was notable for being the former personal assistant to Felix Pappalardi. He would get him from gig to gig. He would make sure he got from gig to gig.
I was waiting.
Made sure, more importantly, what Kevin did is he made sure that people didn't confuse Felix Pappalardi with Jeff Lynne, because in the 70s they were touring a lot. And he had to make sure that those two did not get confused.
Okay, we are exactly 6 minutes and 30 seconds in, and I was waiting to see how long that was going to come up with Felix Pappalardi.
Didn't take long. I've been waiting. I've been waiting for Kevin to come back on.
There you go.
Welcome aboard, Kevin.
Thank you.
But I have to say, Kevin, it's because of you, I think, that your son, both of your sons that we've had on the show, their broad musical knowledge, I feel is absolutely because of you, and it's a pleasure to have you.
I can affirm that that's definitely the reason why.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
Eric
will pay you the $20 later.
Thank you very much. But getting to Working Man's Dead. This, I think, is a Robert Hunter, who was the lyricist. I think he had a lot of influence in this album.
Yeah. Yep. He started to come back in. Let me do the stats first, and then we'll get into Robert Hunter. We'll get into what started changing with the Dead on this album. We'll jump into it. So for those that are new, we do some statistical information at the top of every episode just to kind of ground the conversation. Then we get into the crazy conspiracy theories and wild thoughts. But this was released, this Working Man's Dead from the Grateful Dead was released in June of 1970, produced by Bob Matthews, Betty Cantor, and the Grateful Dead. There was only one single released, Uncle John's Band, hit number 69. Not a very big splash. The album hit number 27 on Billboard, and it finally did go platinum in 1986.
Oh, it took that long.
Long. Yeah, it went gold. It was gold, and then in 86, it went platinum, which would be just before In the Dark came out.
Oh, In the Dark was 87.
Yeah. So right before that, oddly enough, that I would have expected it to do it after that, because after In the Dark came out, it was like their renaissance, and everything was
I'm so surprised that as much airplay as Casey Jones got as well. It's just sort of. That blows my mind that it wasn't the single off the record. Yeah, I did not know that.
Well, what was played on like the album-oriented rock stations would pick up.
But still, I mean, it was a staple though. That's the first,
I mean, I remember having that conversation with my brother one time. Like, if you weren't a Grateful Dead fan, what would be the song you would know? And it was like Touch of Grey, Truckin', or Casey Jones. And I feel like Casey Jones is probably the most identifiable Grateful Dead song to a non-Grateful Dead fan.
You know what? You have to remember, back then, though, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, that was a big album when it came out. And Working Man's Dead, when you hear that Uncle John's Band, it almost sounds like Crosby, Stills, and Nash with the harmonies and stuff. And everybody's singing on it. So maybe that's what they were thinking.
Well, we'll get it. We'll you know what? Let's do that right now, because you make a really good point, and your point is salient, because I think it was I don't know if I think it was Bobby Weir was hanging out with Stephen Stills. I think they lived together for a while during this time, and then they started hanging out with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and the CSN imparted into Garcia and Weir how important vocals were. They imparted that your vocals are an instrument as well, and it's so important to really treat it that way, because they really, everything was kind of slapdash before this. It was kind of like, we'll jam, we're learning, we're kind of getting up and running, but hanging out with stills. And those guys, yeah, exactly, Kevin. You can hear
absolutely
a difference, and as imperfect as it is.
Yeah.
There's attitude. There's a lot of attitude singing on this album, but I think that's the charm of it, is that they were influenced by CSN, and they're trying to apply the tools.
Yep.
And you know what? CSN, you're right, that's them, and no one's going to be them.
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin, were you listening to this album at the time when it came out?
Yes.
Okay.
I was. And I liked Uncle John's band, and you talked about what do you call it? Casey Jones. I thought it was a great song. I thought that would have been the single too. Even back then, I can remember saying it.
Yeah.
But we used to listen. Those were the days of NEW, FM.
Yeah.
And Scott Muni and all that, and we listened to it all the time. They played it. I constantly listened to it.
So, do you remember if you were listening to Oxo Moxoa before, or no? So
this was the first album that I ever.
Okay, no, it's important. It's an important question.
Exactly, and that's, believe me, and that came from more like folk rock kind of thing. Crosby, Stills, Nash, the Byrds, and this was part of that. Kind of came into it.
They were all rolling together too.
What's that?
They were all hanging out together too. It was like
hanging out. David Crosby put an album out that Jerry Garcia played on. He played on
Teach Your Children.
He played steel guitar. Yeah, so they were kind of going back and forth with each other.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you kind of picked that. This is where you kind of got the on-ramp for the Dead, because the previous album was kind of the last of their quote unquote psychedelic phase. Mm-hmm. Where they had, the influence of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and then just the influence of which Eric, we talked about, Eric, Chris, and I, and Kevin the last time when we did American Beauty, was the Bakersfield sound.
Yep, that's just what they call it. That's right.
Yeah, is they were really kind of listening to that California Bakersfield sound, which was kind of Buck Owens, kind of the more of a it was an anti-country. It was this West Coast answer to country music.
Exactly. It's kind of below country. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were really influenced by that too. So you really, it's very interesting how in the late 60s, all these psychedelic bands started to turn out of psychedelia. Right. Like the Doors, made a left turn. Jefferson Airplane started to make that turn. All these big
Clapton from Cream to
exactly.
Listening to Delaney and Bonnie and Derek and the Dominoes and that whole, because he was so much into Dylan and the band. Yeah, that whole scene. Little Feat.
Delaney and Bonnie were very big at the time.
Yeah. And they all made a turn into a more subdued, rootsy. They all ended up kind of going this same route into like a more Americana. Clapton was, his obsession or being enamored with the band at the time, like that whole feeling, the Dead were part of it. Like they just kind of said, you know what, we're gonna kind of veer off in this direction, and did it successfully. I think this is the kind of stuff that people know the Dead for.
I mean, and in part, I think the reason they were able to do it so successfully is that it was really just Garcia and Hunter going back to where they came from before, the acid test and all that kind of stuff. They were bluegrass and folk musicians before they got into the whole psychedelia scene in Frisco. So this was just kind of like, let's take what we learned from, on the first two Dead records and kind of go back and incorporate that into what we did before. And so that's why I think it was such a successful experiment. And I like the idea, you mentioned things being out of tune and stuff, they still kept that idea of like feel over perfection. And it makes you feel like you're listening to a bunch of guys like around a campfire, or like, people hanging out with guitars, and just, it has that like,
it's homegrown.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very homegrown feel. It's like, and you mentioned country, but I love this sort of like, a lot of the indie bands are doing this now, like, that we love. They're following the suit and just sort of, it's not real country music in the traditional sense, but it's like, because of the steel guitar and those like folky elements to it, I think it's, it's such a, it is such a vibe and such a feeling of just being in the moment and being just sort of surrounded by folks who just love just to play music around, you just want to hang with these people. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like Jerry Garcia really was the one that kind of was driving the influence, because it was around this time that he had gotten a steel guitar.
Yeah.
And
he picked up so fast on these instruments. He picked an instrument up and he could play it. That's what Phil Lesh said.
That's what I was exactly about to say, is he's able to consume an instrument and really get good enough to be, maybe not totally prolific, but good enough to really start incorporating it into the music, and you really hear it.
And have an identifiable sound. Like, it's Garcia when he's playing a pedal steel.
Yep.
Yeah, which is amazing, and for people like me that really vastly underestimate the Dead, anytime I dig deeper into these albums, it becomes more and more of a revelation.
It is, because it's more eclectic. We knew the Dead only as like, just to hear the rhetoric of like their 45-minute, 2-hour like solos and, the whole like sort of jam vibe.
Yeah, which 45-minute trucking last night.
Which they would do later on, right? I mean, they would become that kind of a band as well. Yeah. But to have these kinds of albums in their repertoire is fantastic. It's like it gives you a whole new appreciation for what they do, and the brilliance of people like Garcia. Just to hear that distinctive sound, is fantastic. Yeah.
And ahead, one of the things I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off either.
No, you're good.
One of the things that really kind of surprised me today is I was home. I had like a professional development day, so I was home like doing paperwork, and I put this album on with these headphones on, and it's the first time I ever listened to the record through headphones, and how much more nuance there is than I really ever heard before. Like how there's banjo prevalent in there if like you're really listening for it, and like that pedal steel, like it's if you really just how much more upfront it is when I played it through headphones. It really gave me a new respect for how layered and how what great musicians they really. I mean, I always knew they were good musicians, but like how great they are as musicians in the studio. Like I feel like they didn't give themselves enough credit as studio musicians, because in some respect after a while I think it bored him. Garcia referred to it one time as, I think, as like being in the studio is like putting together a ship in a bottle. Like it's like that, like to him it was that tedious, but like the ability they have when they knuckled down and did it is impressive.
It's almost it's not as much a studio as it is in your living room. Right. I mean, it's like in the room kind of feel. It's very warm, I agree. I totally agree. Even listening to it on my phone, just going over some of the tracks today, I was just like, just sort of, it had that feel to it. It's like everything sort of popped. And I mean, it's just, you're right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Kevin, how did this fit in with what you were listening to at the time? Were you listening to The Doors? Were you listening to Abbey Road at the time? Like how did this fit in?
Everybody listened to the Beatles. John Lennon's album came out in 1970. We played it to death. I still play it. We love that album.
That's an amazing album.
And where I picked this up from was, like I said, NEWFM and stuff. Yeah. And I got these albums. I went out and I bought Workingman's Dead. I went out and bought American Beauty. And to me, that was the Grateful Dead at the time. That was before all these live albums came out. Uh-huh. And to me, it was, I put it like with Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Yeah.
That's how I thought about it.
Aunt Sue wasn't a Deadhead, Dad?
No.
Aunt Sue was not a Deadhead for those listening.
She was not a Deadhead. She was
my dad's older sister. I figured she might have had some info.
Aunt Sue, if you're listening, that was your nephew.
He wasn't a Deadhead. No, that was your nephew.
Oh, name drop, but
maybe Christopher would know. This is all the songs in this album were written by Hunter and Garcia. Did they ever do that before?
That I don't know. That's a good question. I actually don't know that.
Everyone. Bob Ware didn't write anything on this album.
Yeah, that was the rise, kind of the really emergence of Robert Hunter. as kind of like a de facto member of the band, right? He kind of, even though he did appear on stage with them, I think around this time, or he's on the album cover, because he was that important.
He played in one song, "Easy Wind." He wrote it by himself without Jerry. But what he also started doing, they started taking him on tour with them, which he didn't perform, but Jerry kept him on tour, so he was with the band, traveling with them and stuff.
Yeah, and I think being around that is important, right?
He became part of that band, really.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the only Dead album without a Bobby song.
Oh, see that?
There was one other thing they were going through. Mickey Hart's father was their manager.
Yeah.
And he stole all their money at this particular time. Wow. They were in a lot of debt at this time.
Yeah, they're like, I think Garcia was like, "Can we see the books?" And the father's like, "No."
Yep.
They were in the hole on top of that because they recorded Oxamoxoa in full twice.
Yeah, because the previous album they recorded on 8-track, and then when they had finished, they all of a sudden got access to a 16-track recorder, and said, "We want to do this. We're getting better at it, and we're trying. Let's re-record it." The thing I got from this album, and I think it goes to the overall tone that we're all kind of feeling, is that this album is in no rush to get to where it's going. That doesn't mean it's a slow album. It just means that the pace, it kind of just takes you gently by the hand and kind of brings you through each song. Not that the songs are slow, but it feels like the vibe and the overall feeling is like is literally chilling out. Like,
it is, because it was recorded in 3 weeks. It was very, very quick. And you get the sense that it's not trying to necessarily prove anything. It's just they're just doing it for just to put out great music.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. It's just just sort of like hanging around, like, let's light that campfire, let's sing around, like, and it really, to be able to do that in a span of 3 weeks, to say that we need to get this done. Garcia was like, we need to get this done, like, now, like right away, and get it over with. Right. So, but on the other hand, it's like, but you don't really get that vibe of it being rushed, or it being absolutely. like it's not out there to prove. We're not out here to prove a point or anything, or make a big statement or anything. It's just we're just putting out great music here. That's the feeling I get. I don't know.
Yeah, and one of their stated goals was to move away from the more improvisational aspects of their recorded material, not the live stuff, but the recorded stuff. They're like, we want to kind of, and that was the influence of CSN, was writing songs, kind of creating complete thoughts. And so not only did the Dead turn away from the psychedelic style music, then they also said, well, we're going to experiment with Americana. We've got this Bakersfield influence, and we want to start writing songs. So there's a lot, Kevin, that is kind of that they're tackling at once. And they self-admittedly, they weren't great in the studio. Like, they were still kind of, and really weren't great at their instruments. They were still learning, they were great at jamming.
They were young, and the songs have a beginning and an end. They don't go on, it's a whole different thing for them, because they were used to jamming on stage,
Even these songs on the record, I don't know that there are any of the songs that they tend to stretch out either. Like,
I don't think so. Exactly.
No, you don't get that vibe. You don't get the there are certain bands that, like the Allman Brothers Band, they would their songs on their first couple of albums were like maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes long, but that they stretched that stuff out 20, 30 minutes. But they put, the emphasis was not on making, they just, at the time, were making records to get their music out there, but their emphasis was the live stuff. And, that's kind of carried over today with, some bands as well. But it's just, it's like, okay, we're here. Okay, we need to get it out there for the commercial market. We need to be heard. So these songs will be attractive. But on the other hand, let's see, the live stage, they take it to a whole new level, So,
take them out on the road.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and to that point, go ahead, Dad. I'm sorry.
What a creative time it was for them, because right after this, they did American Beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Garcia did his solo album. And Bobby Ware did Ace. I mean, all these things, they were all great albums that even still today you could still listen to. They could have been put out last week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Workingman's Dead and American Beauty came out in the same year. Again, this was like that era, which we've talked about in the past, of artists were just kind of just cranking stuff out. You know, Zeppelin did the same thing, like 2 albums in 69. And, you know, it just seemed like that was the normal way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? You just kind of went into the studio, recorded, and then did a tour and then went back in.
I mean, I think Clapton said it best when he said that we made albums just to make albums. There wasn't any pressure necessarily. There was just, we did it because we want, like, again, just to get the music heard. And that was a thing. That was what you did. You made albums, and there was, and then we took it out on the road and, and supported that stuff. But also you didn't, to the same point, he's like, we didn't necessarily have to play the album either. We could have done anything like we wanted to do, but there was a new album out. You know what I mean? Nowadays, it's like, or I would say not nowadays, but I would say probably in the 70s, 80s, it kind of changed where somebody would put out an album and you had to support that album by doing those songs from that record. But in the early days, it was like you could do whatever the hell you wanted. And they didn't care, so it was just, so the set lists were different. They were probably at the same, like every other night was a different set list. They didn't stick to one thing in particular. It was such a great freedom to that. It was such a great time,
just kind of going.
So, yeah.
In the Dead at that time too, like live, they were doing just to show their dedication to what they were doing with American Beauty and, Workingman's, they would play a set like where they would come out and do like an acoustic set before they came out with like the full Electric Dead. In fact, one of the best of their live series that Dick's Picks live series is Volume 8, is from right around the time that this album came out, and people consider it one of the best ones. The whole first disc is just an acoustic set. It sounds like, it's basically the same vibe as like what you would hear, even more so with this album than you would hear on American Beauty. It's actually, if anybody wants to hear how some of this stuff sounded live, that's actually a really good place to start.
Cool. And another good one is Reckoning. There's an acoustic album.
Same vibe, yeah. About 10 years later, yeah.
Let me ask Kevin a question, and anybody else could jump in too. And it may be controversial, but. No, just in kind of looking, this is one of those episodes like that Chris will talk about where this is a pivot album, right? Things change. Now, Kevin, do you in your mind, is this the start of the Dead? Is this really the Dead in their true form? What were the previous 3 albums? Because it was psychedelic and they're kind of clawing their way around. Do you feel that this is it? This is where it starts?
I would agree. I would think this is the start of them. Believe me, because like you say, the other 3 albums. In the beginning, it was a whole different vibe in San Francisco with the psychedelics and Timothy Leary and all this kind of stuff.
Cassidy,
and Hazy, I think this was their start really of getting serious and then touring, and then they went to Europe in '72 with that tour. So, I mean, I think this is when they started getting serious as musicians.
Chris, do you agree with that?
I think wouldn't necessarily say they weren't serious as musicians. I feel like they took the lessons that they learned from what Garcia and Hunter were doing when they graduated from college, and they were doing the stuff in the mid 60s. And then, all of that not fumbling around, but all the stuff with the acid test and all that stuff. I think all of those things needed to happen to then coalesce into what came from Workingman's Dead forward, because you could still see in things like Workingman's Dead, and then later on like Terrapin Station and some of their other records, you could still see the influence of the psychedelia, but it isn't the focal point. It's just like what they needed to what they used to learn and make what is Grateful Dead music. It's like all of those things coming together, and they figured out how to blend it all
it's a part of the mix, not the main ingredient.
Exactly. Yes.
Eric, do you agree? Like, this is kind of where the Dead start. Not that everything was garbage before, but it feels like this is kind of like yeah, they got their feet on the path. They kind of understand what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, they started out like a lot of other bands started out, is they do their own thing, and then they realize that they have to kind of refine it. They gotta sort of pay attention of what's going on around them, and I think these albums do that. I mean, this was the start, the rise of the singer songwriter era, the acoustic era, a lot of these, and yeah, they kind of really they secured their place in that in those couple of years there, right there. So yeah. I mean, and they came on strong, but they still did it their way, right? There was like this sort of offbeat sound, and like they're not quite perfect, but but the point is that they did these couple albums that were very acoustic, very sort of like in that vein, but very much of its time. But you're, I would venture to say, Dean, that you're a big fan of that refinement period where songs become very succinct and very so yeah, I mean, I could see you, right? I mean, do you agree? I mean, you would say,
but that looseness there though with this. So like that's kind of you got to understand, the group that you're listening to, right? So you can kind of set those things.
I mean, they're not technically perfect, but they're just there. But the point is that their songs are, they're actually writing songs, and they're
coming into their own.
They're coming into their own, and they're just sort of breaking out. And whatever they became after this, I think these albums kind of, inform that. A lot of people would probably argue that, oh yeah, like there's going to be outliers out there who think that, oh, there's stuff in the earlier days where, I prefer that kind of thing. But here, I think it's like, you could do a 20-minute version of Casey Jones, or you know what I mean, and make it stick, right? Yeah. And just as like, they can make anything that they did the albums previous to this, they could kind of work that in, and somehow they did it, and that became the Dead. So yeah, yep.
Chris, what do you got?
I'm sorry, Chris.
No, I was going to say too, though, is while at one point you do say like, this is where they came into their own, they found their sound. Their sound did continue to evolve, and it's not like they were trend chasing, but they would take things as their career went along.
Yeah.
And if there was like some new sound that was coming out, they'd find a way to incorporate it, but it would always kind of still distinctly be the Dead. Like, like they incorporated elements of like, disco into their sound with, with Shakedown Street. Or if you listen to Terrapin Station, that's almost like a prog rock record, like, and like I know Eric's talked about From the Mars Hotel is like Mars very Hotel. Funky and has a lot of funk vibes to it. So, they found their sound, and after they refined it with these two records, to varying degrees of success depending on who you ask, they continued to refine it. And if there was a musical style that they that caught them, they weren't afraid to bring that in. Like, and then, you got elements of jazz on Wake of the Flood. So there's like, they're still doing that the whole way through their career. And it's just, they refined their sound with these two, and then were unafraid, to their credit, to add to it. And to Eric's point too, is like, depending on the Dead fan, there are people that have their favorite periods. Like there's some people that won't listen after Pigpen died, they're out. And then there's people that'll say, I'm only listening to the Keith Godchow period, or Brent Midland was the heart and soul of the band until he died in 1990. So there is still that element of the Dead too. People definitely do pick their favorites.
There's one band that I always admired that always, to me, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you guys agree, but Wilco was always, for me, sort of the new Dead. Like, because they did things so much. I mean, they were so offbeat, and their stuff, always sounded a little off to me, even sometimes out of tune, out of whatever. But they always, each album was sort of, so different. And, I kind of get those really, I mean, Grateful Dead must have been a huge influence on that band. And Chris, I totally agree. I mean, I see the evolution, but always being them, and not many bands, could say that. Like some bands just sort of like really lean into the times and just sort of like go into what's being played, but to keep that sense of self and that sense of a certain sound is not easy. Not easy in the business. So I
never felt like they were trend chasing.
Yeah.
God, I feel like you were going to say something before I started talking.
What do you call it? Jerry Garcia, you also have to remember, was really influenced by Bob Dylan. And Bob Dylan is somebody who always changed. He always tried different things.
Yeah.
He was influenced by that a lot, So
good point. In speaking of influences, I couldn't help but listen. The more I listened to Dire Wolf, the more I heard echoes of "Teach Your Children" by Crosby, Stills, and Nash in the guitar work.
Oh, it's steel. That's steel guitar, man.
But even down to some of the notes and the way the notes are played in "Teach Your Children," where there's just kind of like harmonics and single notes.
Yeah. And the bounce to it.
The songs have nothing in common with themselves except for that. The way the steel guitar kind of comes in with a note and just kind of hangs on it, the way "Teach Your Children" does. I can't help but think that was an influence as well there.
But Garcia,
what do you got, Kevin?
Dire Wolf, Christopher?
What's that, Dad?
When he was a little boy, you remember he used to sing "Don't Murder Me."
No, but that's I tell you what, it's one of my favorite records. It's one of my favorite songs on the album. I don't remember doing that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
The little kid used to sit in the back. "Don't murder me."
So you're driving, Kevin. You're driving around with a toddler in the back playing Dire Wolf.
Dead playing. Come on.
It makes all the sense in the world. Now this whole thing makes sense to me.
It's better than when Caitlin was a baby. I was driving in the car the one time and I had a Muddy Waters record on, and I'm a Man came on, and like the women in the background going, ah! And like hear my daughter screaming in the background.
Man,
as soon as you said Dire Straits, that's what I thought of. And that's where that's how Christopher even back then was listening to music.
Yeah, it's amazing. A couple of other for me, a couple of other highlights are Cumberland Blues, Black Peter. Am I off on that? I'm not a big Pigpen fan. I mean, I get his vocals. He's okay as a vocalist.
Yeah, I'm not a big Pigpen.
Yeah, it's like the George Harrison one cut per album. Okay,
But I mean, and there are moments when live I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like I love when he does Mr. Charlie, but then like I can't stand Love Light. Like Pigpen is like good in small doses. Like it's very true.
Kind of like the Peanuts character he's named after.
Yes.
I wonder what it would have been if he would have lived. Yeah. Do you think he would have hung in there?
I don't know.
I think so. I think it was a whole, if there's a band that seemed the most like they were family, and knowing what we know about bands, how they're like, Hall & Oates, we weren't really friends. Rick Nielsen just recently said, we're successful because I'm not friends with Rick Nielsen. It seems like the Dead kind of were guys that, and they had that whole approach to their songwriting, right? They were in the beginning, we're kind of into that whole theory of of the community, and if everybody wrote the song, everybody gets credit for it. So I think Pigpen probably would have been there.
Phil Lesh referred to him as their blues.
Even the producer, Betty Cantor, she was part of the Grateful Dead family. She was always she did all the concerts and stuff. She did a lot of the sound.
So right? Betty Cantor is huge in the history of the Dead because she was kind of like their archivist before there was an archivist. She was the one responsible for recording all of their shows.
The Betty boards.
The Betty boards are big.
Exactly.
Like if you can, when Dead fans first started like tape trading, if you can get a soundboard tape that Betty Cantor Jackson recorded, it was a big deal. Like the one show that everybody points to is like the penultimate Dead show is in part because it was one of the few soundboards you can get. And that's Cornell, May 8th, 1977. And that's one of hers. Like if you find a Betty, if you could find a Betty board, if you found a Betty board tape when tape trading was a thing, that was a huge, huge deal. So she's a huge element of their history.
And I think we've talked about in the past, that's what endeared them to the fans as well, is their openness. They really pioneered the art of the taper section. allowing people to bring in like really, professional microphones on booms and setting them up and pointing them down. So you can't have anything but love for these guys because they understand, they are literally making music for their fans, which you have to you really have to appreciate that no matter what you feel about them. Easy Wind by Pigpen. Okay. But you've got, the two big ones, Uncle John's Band and Casey Jones. And Uncle John's Band really kicks the album off in just such a light way. It just kind of it's really light and airy.
It's a great album opener for
sure. I think it really kind of sets the tone for this quote unquote new sound or the left turn to take. And think about it at the same time. In 1970, there was another band that was also influenced by the Bakersfield sound, which was CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Yeah.
So you see how bands can take the same influence and run it through, right, Kevin?
Yeah, go into different.
You get something totally different. They were, CCR was closer to the Buck Owens sound, the that type of thing. But then the Dead were kind of taking it and then, putting it through their Americana and Roots and all the other stuff they have going on, and you get something totally different, which is the beauty of music.
And you get that cross-pollination musicians, right? Because Tom Fogerty played with some of the members of the Dead after when he started making solo records.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, so it was just again, that whole, we talk about the LA scene, but then there was the whole San Francisco scene.
Yep.
Which was just as vibrant, again, albeit a little more weird at the beginning, right? Because of the psychedelia, a little weirder, but kind of got its stuff straightened out. Like I said in the beginning, you had the Doors kind of getting through that and then becoming a blues band. And then you had Jefferson Airplane kind of getting out of it and mellowing. And then once they got to Jefferson Starship and Marty Bailing came back, they were, softer also, So I think we can make the case that, that whole psychedelic era absolutely had a timer on it because there was no bands that were psychedelic that came through the 70s that continued to that I can think of. Anything, Kevin?
Look at Hot Tuna. Hot Tuna was a big playing blues, classic blues and stuff, old blues songs.
Yeah, they were doing. He was doing that. Jorma Kaukonen was doing that from the beginning as his side gig. And
you know what? He's still doing it.
Yeah.
He played Carnegie Hall, a month or two ago?
Right.
Yeah. I saw them maybe 10 years ago at a festival.
Yeah.
Hot Tuna, Chris Robinson's Brotherhood.
Oh wow, really?
It was the Avett Brothers were the headliner. Kate Pearson came out.
That's awesome.
It was up in Poughkeepsie at the old airport.
Very cool.
It was called Speed of Sound Festival. But anyway, Eric, what are your top cuts?
The whole album.
Wow. That doesn't happen too often.
No, I mean, it's not the kind of album where you single out any particular cuts because the entire vibe of the record is what it is. This is a true album. This is one of those cases where you could say albums were albums, and the fact that there weren't any. The one song that that got the most airplay is not the hit single off the song. Well, it kind of says something. I feel, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's just, I don't know. There are just those early periods of just listening to the entire album is what it's all about. Mm-hmm. I can't really, the first track is great. There are certain albums that stand out. Jerry Garcia's, piercing steel pedal guitar. The fact that he's such a personality, such a statement, such a, it's like, he's like Coltrane out there. He's like, he's known for that. You know what I mean? Like that's, you never heard such a thing in that kind of like blend of whatever it is, like country, blues, folk, whatever. Mm-hmm. To have that kind of sound just so stand out so much.
And you mentioned Garcia as a character, and I think on this album, hearing him strain to like reach certain notes gives it that like authenticity.
Yeah,
right? Like it's kind of like it's real people, right? In the age of everything
really
being auto-tuned, it's kind of refreshing to hear somebody. It kind of sticks out now because you're so used to everything being perfect.
Yeah,
and
because
everything lined up that when I heard, I'm like, oh wow, he kind of swung and missed, but that's part of the color of the song.
This is not
also,
this is pre-punk, right? Punk music was like, oh, we're playing this stuff because it's not perfect. Yeah. There's the whole like culture of like we could just do whatever the hell we want. Here's kind of the same thing. It's kind of fans of the Dead they didn't care. It's just it's just like there's just certain vibe. Like this is just somebody just like this is a friend of mine that just happens to play great guitar, but he doesn't have quite the greatest voice. But I don't care because I just love what he does. That kind of. And when he died, I mean, I know, I personally don't, but my sister had friends that were devastated. I mean, absolutely devastated when he was gone. Like, cause they were such devoted fans. They would go cross country. Yeah. I mean, follow the Dead. I mean, it was just a thing, that culture is just. Yeah,
I remember when I was at work. It was the summer I was working for my dad's friend Mike, and I remember Mike telling me, and then me calling my dad. I started making that phone call, and you getting how upset you got, and then us having the discussion that Garcia dying might have been more profound than John Lennon dying to a lot.
Really, Kevin, you think so?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's such a following. Yeah.
I mean, think about how many people built their lives around what he did. Like, as far as like not just like music and how music can shape how you think, but like people built their lives around following this man around like he was Jesus.
I mean, he was still touring and stuff, where John Lennon was, by the time he died, he was just putting an album out after years. So, he kind of stepped away from the music.
Yeah, it's a good point. The Dead became everybody's like favorite hometown band. Like that's how people felt.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Kevin, it hit you hard when
I felt, believe me, yes, it did.
Yeah, you were in a huge Dead phase at the time.
I was. I would come in and out of my Dead phase. That's right. But believe me, I did feel bad when he died. Yeah.
So Chris, when you saw your dad with the tie-dye T-shirt, you knew he was in the Dead phase at that point. He's back in the Dead phase.
I don't know. I remember being in the car. My father, like you, and I'm sure like all of us, my dad, when I was a kid, his car was just like tapes everywhere. And at the time when I was in high school, it would be like not just Dead tapes. It would be like Garcia with David Grisman, Garcia with the Garcia Band, Garcia with Merle Saunders. I remember buying him Terrapin Station one Christmas when I was in high school.
That's
so like it was like a huge. When I was in high school, it was like a big thing, and then it kind of died off. And then Jonathan and I, in our 30s, I got into the Dead when I was working at a performing arts school in Manhattan, and we were doing. I think I said this when we did American Beauty. We were doing hair, so I was listening to a lot of 60s music, and I started listening to the Dead a lot. And then Jonathan, my brother, saw the Bobby Ware documentary on Netflix, and that kind of sucked him in. And then when we got into the Dead, my dad kind of fell back into it too.
So, you saw Dead and Company a few times.
Yeah, you saw him like 3 times with Jonathan. Yeah, and I saw him one time.
I've been waiting for you. Come on in. The water's fine.
And that was it. Like, and I went through that whole thing, like where I would say, okay, I'm going to really try and listen because I don't get this, but I feel like this is a band. And again, I think I said this on the last episode. It's the same thing with Springsteen. I never understood what people dug about these two artists so much. And then, so I just kept coming back to the Dead until it finally clicked for some reason.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
I'm getting there too, admittedly.
I kind of had that same experience, and it's, for me, it was, in the case of Springsteen, Chris, it was actually the album he did, The Rising, right after 9/11. That's what got me into Springsteen, believe it or not. I wasn't born in the USA. I mean, of course I had it, but I was so struck with that record that he would write an entire album of songs specifically about 9/11 from a different perspective, even from the perspective of the terrorists. Was amazing to me. It was like, wow, I respect this guy so much. And I went back and I started listening, so some things do take time. But I think in the case of the Dead, it's like, it's just a sense of community that they've created. I think that the older you get, that's what you really want, is to be able to share and listen to music that is, that you could feel like, you're almost friends with these people. Like, you know what I mean? Like in a weird sense, you're not putting these people on pedestals. Like a lot of the artists that we like, they turn out to be assholes. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say. And I mean, I don't mean any disrespect, but on the other hand, it's like, but it's true. It's like you don't meet your heroes kind of thing. But with these kinds of people, you're not really looking at them as heroes necessarily. You're looking at them as like just a buddy, or just, you know what I mean? Like
they were creating a legacy that they weren't even aware they were doing just by, it wasn't like a calculated thing. It certainly wasn't created by the record company. These guys invented massive touring, marathon tours, and just kind of, and instead of selling records, right, they make, they became known as the touring band, right, Kevin? I mean, that was
more than selling albums. Absolutely.
And I mean, and even that whole idea of like recording shows and stuff, like, it came to a point where in the late 2000s, like 2010s, like where you went to go see a band and you could have in a matter of hours an MP3 or a download of their show. Like I remember going to see Metallica with my brother, and then like 2 days later being able to download, Nassau Coliseum, February 2009. And like, my brother goes and follows Goose around, and like within a matter of hours, right? That he has the show that he just saw. Yeah. So,
Goose or Geese? Geese was just on SNL, right?
But Goose is the jam band.
That was weird, right? I saw that too. I was like, wait a minute, it's not the same band.
No, it's not.
There's Goose and there's Geese.
And there's Geese. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
There's actually an article in the Times about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like me coming out with a band called, the Grateful Live.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Hot Tuna puts all their stuff out every show.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of bands are doing that. Dave Matthews. I mean, there's so much. The live album is dead. There's no like one statement anymore. It's like everybody's kind of putting out,
because everything goes up on YouTube right away. So why not create that goodwill of encouraging it?
Right.
And this way it's like, oh, these guys are really cool because they don't mind it. Whereas you go to a lot of shows, they take the phones, you put the phone away. The Dead were way ahead of the curve on that. They understood that their audience was like, there could be their greatest cheerleaders. Mm-hmm. And if we treat them right and we treat them as equals, it's going to pay off. And they didn't know it, but they were playing the long game. I mean, they really were.
They really were.
Hey, if you're going to submit people to 30 minutes of one song, I mean, and then people are into it and they're standing there watching and they're listening and they're digging it. I mean, that's what they're all about. Like,
there's actually a website. Yeah, there's a website that you can go to. I think it's called Heady HEADY version.
Yeah,
where like if you really dig a Grateful Dead song, like if you really like when they do China Cat Sunflower into I Know You Rider, you can like type in what was the best performance of China Cat Rider.
Wow.
And it'll come up and it'll say, these are the top 10 most preferred versions of this song. And this is where you can find them. And so that's like,
that's an exhaustive database.
Yeah. It's actually really impressive. And then some of them, and what's interesting is that some of them you can't get, they're not like released in like the normal form. It's not like it's on like some Grateful Dead thing. It's like some tape that you got to go find on re-listen to like look for it. And like, it's some bootleg that somebody traded or something. It's really crazy.
So Kevin, when did you start that website and how long have you been managing it for?
First of all, I wouldn't be able. Christopher might be able to start the website. Not me.
As we close out, Kevin, were you big into the bootlegs back then? Was that something you were aware of, or was it kind of more like, here's an album and if they come around, I'm going to go see them?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it was.
I feel like that was more of an 80s thing with the Dead, though, wasn't it?
Legs came after, really. Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, I know it was a big thing, but it might have been also something that was kind of really not well known and not something people realized was even going on. Maybe.
It was a different time now. Now everything, like you say, is right at your fingertips.
I think it was an opportunity for people to kind of like, here's what the Dead is really like. I think it's where the bootleg thing came in to play. It's like you want to experience a Grateful Dead, but you're not really sure. It's right here. Right. And that's where, but now it's like it's rampant.
Yeah.
It's like so
it's not even, it's a non-issue. It's like it's gonna happen. So
it's just a matter of knowing what you're looking for, though, because it's such a dirge of stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's like
right.
That's the beauty. That's the blessing and the curse. Is
how do you pick and choose what show, what city, what different cities have a different vibe, different audience. So I mean, I would
like I know I have specific years I like to look for when I look for certain dead stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. All right. I think that's a good place to kind of tie it up. Kevin, do you want to give us some last thoughts on Workingman's Dead? You lived it.
To me, it was the start for them. It was the first time they actually got some kind of radio play too. I think.
Yeah.
And I think it was to me, it's the official beginning of the Dead.
All right.
Right then and there. That started it off. I think.
All right. We're going to leave it there then. We're going to not go any further. We're going to give Kevin the last note on it. Right, Chris?
Sounds good to me, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and or YouTube. You want to comment on whether you think that's the start of the Grateful Dead? We kind of all feel that it kind of is, that this is where the magic kind of started and the band kind of understood what the mission was, as it were, and really started to kind of, lean into it. And we already have the American Beauty episode that we did last year, I think it was. So we've got that. Yeah. And then we've got In the Dark, which was our very first venture into the world of the Grateful Dead. So you can check out all those episodes and give yourself a little mini, concert of our podcasts if you want to. If, you want to have something to accompany your listening pleasure. So that's going to do it for this one. New episodes come out every Thursday, but if you can't remember that, give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform provider. There's a little follow button, and you get a gentle notification when new episodes are hot and ready out of the oven and waiting for you to listen to. So that's going to do it for this episode. For Christopher Clark, for Kevin Clark, for Eric, this has been Dean. We'll catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.